The Broncos' defensive line going into this offseason ends up being one of the most interesting parts of this team. It was, on the whole, pretty good, even though it was more or less piecemeal at times. The Broncos started with one alignment. They had Derek Wolfe and Adam Gotsis on the outside, Shelby Harris in the middle. It was pretty obvious from the get-go that Harris was miscast as a nose tackle, something that the Broncos came around to understanding and then eventually moved. Then they found themselves in a better spot. Gotsis essentially got pulled. Harris got moved into his spot on the outside. Mike Purcell took over as the nose tackle. Then the Broncos' defensive line started to take off just a little bit. And they were okay. I'm not going to go over the top and say they were an amazing defensive line, but Derek Wolfe had a good year. He had 7 sacks. Harris had 6 sacks. Impressive stuff on the whole, especially given that they didn't have a ton of time together. Wolfe's season was cut short. Harris's time at the position he belonged in was short as well. So there, at least on the surface, looks like something to build off of. Purcell played pretty well when he was down there. Now, granted, the overall stats pretty minimal because he really wasn't in as much as you tend to think. He was sort of the nominal starter, but really only in on 39% of the team's defensive snaps this year. But you got some mixing and matching a bit at times from DeMarcus Walker. I'm not discounting his 4 sacks. It was 4th best on the team, but I can remember 3 of them off the top of my head, and they were pretty much just being the guy that was there when the quarterback tried to scramble and ran into him. I don't think Walker distinguished himself in any way and certainly doesn't look anything like the second-round pick that he was. Draymond Jones, on the other hand, looked pretty good. Played in 14 games, had 14 tackles, but 3.5 sacks in that span, and got better as the season went along. Won a Defensive Player of the Week in the AFC. So there are some building blocks. It's not very deep, though. It's not very deep at all, because behind the guys that I mentioned that actually made any tackles at all, it's minimal. Harris had 49. Purcell had 48. Wolfe had 34. Walker, 22. Gotsis, 16. Jones, 14. And that's it. No other defensive lineman. I take that back. Deion Sizer had 1 tackle. Kyle Pecco had 1 tackle. But no other defensive lineman had any significant impact for the Broncos. Draymond Jones, of course, will be here. That's very valuable. Presumably, DeMarcus Walker will be here as well. You might as well see what he can do. After all, when you look at the contract situation, might as well keep him around, especially when you look at the lack of depth at that position. Because the Broncos are not deep at all. Gave you those names, and that's really all they've got. What's more interesting about it, of course, is the idea that they have a lot of free agents. DeMarcus Walker will be on the final year of his rookie deal next year, the salary cap hit of about $1.6 million. So you presume he'll be back, unless he just looks awful in OTAs, because he wasn't anything amazing. But for the money, you might as well let him play it out. But the main guys involved there on that defense that we've talked about, Mike Purcell was a restricted free agent. He should be back. I don't know if you have an elite nose tackle there, but you have someone who can certainly do the job for you. They take him off the field a lot of the time, obviously, when they're in certain pass defenses. So you can use Mike Purcell. But Adam Gotsis is an unrestricted free agent. Derek Wolfe is an unrestricted free agent. And Shelby Harris is an unrestricted free agent. When you look at the total number of snaps at that position, Harris played the most at 60.4%, Wolf 49.8%, Purcell, as I mentioned, 38.8%, and Gotsis 26.2%. And they're all free agents. Purcell's, again, restricted. Don't worry about it. If the Broncos want him back, he'll be back. He's not going to break the bank. Has a cap hit of $640,000. It's not outlandish. But for the Broncos, you can look at defensive end, however. Presumably, they're just going to have Draymond Jones take over one of those spots. That's a money-saving move. It's a position that can be expensive. Derek Wolf's average annual value of his contract, last contract was $9 million. Shelby Harris is probably going to make a leap, maybe up to close to that. Doesn't quite have the pedigree coming into the free agency that Derek Wolf did when he had his contract redone. But the money is, of course, more plentiful now. So Harris is going to get a big raise. If you were to look at it for the Broncos and say, all right, I'm building this team, and I'm going to take the names off the back of the jersey, which of these guys do I want back? I want to get Purcell back at a reasonable number. At very worst, he's good depth. And I want to get Shelby Harris back. Shelby Harris, to my mind, has a better future than Derek Wolf. Now, he's only a year younger. But when you watch him over the course of the season, I think that Harris just looked like a better player, even though Wolf had one of his better seasons in years. Part of what you do when you invest in free agents is you should be looking at paying for what is to come, not for what has happened in the past. And that's going to be a challenge for the Broncos. Now, Derek Wolf, however, might be more gettable because he finished his season with an injury. Injuries have followed Derek Wolf around. I don't think he's necessarily injury prone, but he has had a lot of injuries. Guys hit 30 with an injury background, and understandably, teams aren't willing to spend a tremendous amount of money on you. So if I were to guess, I would say Derek Wolf and Mike Purcell will be back. Adam Gotsis and Shelby Harris will move on. But if I had my choice, and you couldn't bring Wolf and Harris back, I'd pick Harris. You don't entirely have your choice. It's free agency. Shelby Harris can pick the team he wants to go to, and he may want to go to a team where he's more featured. He may want to go to a team that's closer to contending. But that's the way I'd look at it. But this is a fascinating position. You only had a half dozen guys that had any significance, and 4 of them are technically free agents. So a lot of overhaul is going to happen here on this defensive line one way or the other. You look at the draft first and foremost. I've said it before. The Broncos need their offensive line, defensive line, cornerback, wide receiver, and inside linebacker in that order. That's where they need it. Really have to build from in out on the line. Build from the inside out. So defensive line's a big part of that equation. The Broncos might be able to address it in the draft. USA Today has this latest mock draft and has the Broncos doing exactly that with a player that I have suggested they very seriously consider. I'll explain who that is, why that is, and if it could happen next. For the Broncos defensive line, there are more than a few players that could be a fix, and some of them might be available in the draft and might be available when the Broncos select at 15. The USA Today had their mock draft and had the Broncos picking at number 15, Javon Kinlaw, out of South Carolina. And Kinlaw is one of the guys out here at the Fan. May have seen it tweeted out here and there, the pictures of it. We have something called the Big Board of Possibilities, which I can't tell if I love that name or I think that's the goofiest name ever. So I don't know. I sort of love it. Where all the hosts here decided we'd all sit down and we'd pick 5 players that we thought were realistic, good fits for the Broncos that they could obtain at 15. Everyone but Mark Schlereth, who just picked funny names of people who actually weren't even draft eligible. But they are funny names. I'll give them that. DMac and I both picked Kinlaw as one of those players. And I think it makes a lot of sense. Look, the Broncos need an O-line. I've harped on that for years and years and years. The fact that I still have to keep talking about it for years and years and years says a couple things, doesn't it? But in the case of some of these defensive linemen, especially given the situation I laid out, the fact that the Broncos don't really have a lot of tremendous options. They have a lot of free agency to deal with. Kinlaw is a nose tackle. Very, very well regarded. 6'5", 308 out of South Carolina. Most of the draftniks consider him to be better even than Raekwon Davis of Alabama, who most of the folks have third. Now, so Kinlaw headed to the Broncos would be basically a plug-and-play type of guy, especially if you have Mike Purcell. And if you do that, I think, honestly, you've probably fixed one position. You bring Purcell back, you have Kinlaw, you're remaining in the 3-4-D. Great. The middle of your defensive line is set. That's not an insignificant development. The Broncos would not only have their starting situation improved, but would also have their backup situation improved. Even if that means that Purcell is starting while Kinlaw gets his sea legs. So that makes a lot of sense. Now, the pie in the sky approach is if you get a little lucky, a lot more than a little lucky, he's probably going to go in the top 8 picks. But the one thing that's a certainty about the NFL draft is some people fall. They just do. Somebody always surprises. There's always a Denzel Ward that gets picked. And perhaps Derek Brown of Auburn slides. Derek Brown looks like a regular Pro Bowl level defensive tackle. And from the get-go. So these are one of the situations the Broncos armed with 12 picks, expected to be 12 picks, in the draft. Now you can trade compensatory draft picks. That, by the way, is a rule that was basically set in motion by the Denver Broncos, who pushed for that years ago. If Derek Brown ends up at 10 or 11, from the Broncos, I pounce. I happily pounce. And you might even look to a situation as if he's not, and you look at someone like Kinlaw, and you realize he's going to be a little bit lower. You can trade down a spot or two, pick up an extra pick, and still get it. Javon Kinlaw. The Broncos need the offensive line most of all, but they do need both of them fixed. Everything that the Broncos love about their defense, everything that it's predicated on. It does better when you have a line that can do its job. Not only a run stuffer in the middle who can lock that down, but if you can get somebody who can get a little bit of penetration or at least eat up a couple of blockers, now all of a sudden, everybody behind your defensive line gets better. It's one of the things, one of the reasons when I look at it and I try to explain to everybody why it's so important to build your offensive and defensive lines. And I know, look, Broncos country, I know, most of you know that. But there are a lot of fans that maybe are still somewhat new to the game or maybe have been introduced through fantasy football or whatnot and don't really realize the value of line play. If your defensive line is good, your linebackers automatically become better, even the same four guys. A.J. Johnson becomes better with a better defensive line. Todd Davis becomes better with a better defensive line. Even Von Miller and Bradley Chubb improve with a better defensive line. And the guys behind them do as well, whether the Broncos bring Justin Simmons back or not. Simmons or Parks or Kareem Jackson, Chris Harrison, whoever is going to start opposite Chris Harris Jr. If they even get Chris Harris Jr. back, we'll get to cornerback later. All of those guys get better when your defensive line is doing their job. That's why when I look at the offensive and defensive line, those are bang for the buck positions. Because if you get a quality starter, you have made, in this case, 7 other guys on your team immediately better. Or 8. Just by shoring up a certain position. Getting a defensive tackle like Brown or Kinlaw literally makes, in the Broncos case, the 8 guys behind him better. So you get improvements at positions without actually improving the personnel at the position. And for a team like the Broncos, in which depth is an issue, that's really something that has value. It can make an enormous difference. The offensive line is the same way. Everybody on the offense gets better when the offensive line is better. Phillip Lindsay gets better. Royce Freeman gets better. Drew Lock gets better. Cortland Sutton and Noah Fant get better. Even Deshaun Hamilton gets better. But that D-line might be one of those spots of value. Because when you look at the guys in the middle, Brown, Kinlaw, Davis, these are guys that under most drafts are probably all considered the top defensive tackle available in a draft. And this year, all 3 of them might be available for the Broncos. Probably 2. I'd be surprised if Derek Brown stopped and if he dropped. But if he did drop and the Broncos could make a move up, you have an option of picking the guys that normally you don't get at 15. You don't normally get guys like this at 15. If Derek Brown isn't there, if you don't have Joe Burrow at the top, Tagovailoa, Okudah, Chase Young, so many talented guys, Javon Kinlaw is not at 15. No way. But he might be for the Broncos. The Broncos are in such a good position in this draft. To use a basketball analogy, the ball is being alley-ooped to them. You just have to make sure you finish the dunk. Because there is enough talent in this first round that at 15, the Broncos should not miss. They should get an immediate starter out of the number 15 pick in the draft. A guy like Kinlaw, who USA Today thinks would be the pick, he would solve that. You would get an immediate day 1 starter. Derek Brown, same thing, even with a higher ceiling. You could argue that if you would need to go some other direction, you can get a tackle at 15, and you wait till the end of the first round, and Raekwon Davis is still sitting there at 31, 32, 33. Go get him. Solve both those problems. There is nothing that will make the Denver Broncos faster, better, than getting a lineman on either side. Not a wide receiver. That's fun. You'll get more highlights. But the wide receiver makes 2 people better. Quarterback and maybe a running back. Maybe. The fastest route to success for the Denver Broncos is by going with a lineman, offensive or defensive. In this case, keep an eye on Javon Kinlaw. May not have been able to see him play out of South Carolina. But the guy can go. And Mike Purcell's been a nice story, and he's a nice player. But Kinlaw, and especially Derek Brown, would immediately be the best players at their position on the Broncos. Immediately. Day 1 starters. The Broncos should look in that direction. Build out that line. Faster you do it, faster the Broncos get back to the playoffs. The Colorado Avalanche were at home tonight. They have come into this game winning 4 of their last 12. They left it winning 4 of their last 13. falling in overtime to the Penguins, 4-3. Yeah, they get the loser point, but that's very, very slight consolation. Our Avalanche insider, Adrian Dater, break it all down with us and what it means next. Had to let that breathe a little bit. In case you didn't hear there, of course, the great drummer from Rush, Neil Peart, passed away today at 67 after a battle from brain cancer. That is a devastating musical loss. Joining us now, courtesy of Bud Light, is our Avalanche insider, Adrian Dater. And AD, you warned about that this week. You warned about this game and said that it was very important for the Avs to come back and play a good performance. And they had a letdown in the third and a letdown in overtime.
Yeah, they did, Sean. And yet, sandwiched in between those two things was something they haven't done all year, which is score a goal with the extra skater with the goalie pulled. So they scored a big clutch goal, tied it up. But, as I just finished writing, I think you still have to look at this game as a little bit on the glass half empty side and glass half full. Another third period lead that they lost and left another point on the table at home on home ice. That's 4 of the last 5 home games they've lost. Games where they either had the lead in the third or a game was tied in the third after they, tied it up. As Eric Johnson told me after the game, it's becoming a problem. We got to fix it soon. He said that'd be a good idea.
Well, this team, as you pointed out, again, the third period's been a bugaboo. Also, it's worth noting the Avalanche are the only team in the NHL that has yet to be able to win a game when entering the third period down even 1 goal. So something is going wrong with the team in the third period. You've been around them all season long. What are you seeing that's causing this kind of problem, either when they're up or they're down?
You know what? I thought Jared Bednar had an interesting point after the game where he said he doesn't think the guys are talking enough on the ice. So I thought that was interesting. He wishes the team were a little more vocal. And, I guess that's one interesting way to analyze it. Maybe they're getting a little too tight on the ice. Everybody's kind of clamming up and looking nervous and not really rah-rahing on the bench with each other, and everybody just sitting around and waiting for something bad to happen. It's happening. So I thought that was an interesting comment. This team needs to, get some clutch plays again. I mean, I know they scored the big goal tonight, but it's too late. You should have found a way to get that extra point. And they played another jittery, opportunistic overtime where first shot, the overtime beats them. Kind of a routine shot, it looked like to me, but big Pavel Francouz through the 5-hole, and that's all she wrote.
So the lack of communication, I think that's an interesting thing, and I really haven't noticed that as well. So, I mean, I think when you're bringing that up and the coach is bringing that up, could you break that down for folks who maybe don't really know hockey as well, what you need to do when you aren't communicating, what sort of problems and breakdowns that leads to, and why it might happen if it's not really a problem until late in the game?
Yeah, I think it's, he's talking about decision making, defensive coverage, like, one guy saying, "Hey, I got him," I got it. That's actually one thing he said tonight was that, there's not enough communication with guys where they're supposed to be positionally, not enough guys telling each other where they are and telling other guys to go where they should be, and that, that kind of thing. Just talking. That's an interesting point. I think, the Avalanche have looked a little too individualistic in these third periods where they're kind of, doing good things to the team, but when they get the lead, they kind of either sit back too much, or when the other team makes a big play, they kind of you feel the air go out of the building a little bit. It didn't help tonight. It seemed like 3/4 of the building here tonight was full of Pittsburgh Penguin fans. So, I don't feel like it was a nervous night all along for Avs fans in the building where they were outnumbered like 4-1 tonight.
Is this something? And we're talking with Adrian Dater, our Avalanche insider. You can follow him at @Dater on Twitter. Is this something, Adrian, that the players there is some youth on this team, especially on defense? Is this something that comes with experience, or is it more to the fact that, as you pointed out, guys just aren't really communicating at times. And when you don't, you maybe don't realize that it's missing. Is this something that they'll get better at with age and experience, or is it something they'll get better at because they just have to start doing it?
Well, I don't know why they need more experience to hold leads. I mean, this core of guys have been around enough together long enough that they shouldn't have these kind of problems. I mean, the top line's been together for 3 years. Eric Johnson's been around a long time, but he was a -3 tonight and on the ice for his big goal against. It seems like there's plenty of experience and should be leadership out there. You start to ask other questions though too. Is Bednar's lineup? Is he making the right decisions? On the ice they had for the last goal against, they had JT Comfer, Nazem Kadri, and Eric Johnson on the ice. That seems to me a little bit of a weird threesome there. Easy to second guess. Francouz makes the save. They probably go the other way, get a line change, and new guys, and off they go. I mean, I'm sure you would have seen a McCarr or McKinnon out there any second, but a lot of line changes lately, a lot of changes by Bednar offensively. Not a lot's working, though, for him right now. It seems like the Avs are really having a hard time scoring a lot of goals right now, too. I mean, one of their goals tonight, don't forget, was a lucky fluke bouncer from the 65-footer that beat Matt Murray.
Right.
So they really only scored two real goals tonight. And that's just not good enough.
You're right. And then look, they've lost now, they've only won straight out 4 of 13 games. Now you've been alternating goaltenders. Francouz and Grubauer have now been alternating games. All three games, all losses. Francouz gives up the 4 goals in this one. Is there a concern about the Avalanche's goaltending that maybe not only do you not have a number 1 and a number 2, that you might not have a number 1 at all?
I mean, I think the Avs would say no, that we got faith in our guys, but the fact is, Bednar is yanking guys in and out of the lineup and in the crease right now. One night it's Gruby, one night it's how about Francouz? He doesn't seem to know who the number 1 guy is right now, and in fact, he said yesterday that basically whoever's playing best the last game is going to probably play the next game, and until somebody really grabs this number 1 job and really grabs it outright again. So, I think there's some concern about the goaltending, but I think there's concern about other areas of this team too, like, giving pucks away in the neutral zone and defensive zone all the time when you got a lead and not coming up with any, killer instinct kind of goals when you've got that 1-goal lead, get the 2-goal lead. Why can't you get that 2-goal lead and stop making everything so hard on yourself at the end of games? There's a lot of stuff going wrong right now.
And I've seen this with the Avs before in previous teams too, but I don't think there's been an Avs team quite this talented in a while. Sometimes, in my opinion, you see hockey teams that can be, and I mean this somewhat facetiously, too talented. And it seems like sometimes the Avs, especially what you're talking about with the lead, are almost so talented they sort of seem to put it into cruise control sometimes.
Yeah.
And you get knocked over the head in these times. I mean, how long does it take for that message to sink in?
I mean, I've been saying that kind of thing for a couple of years in a way. I always still think that this team has a tendency to let its foot off the gas, either sometimes during games or after a couple wins or something. That they don't get that third win like they're not stringing anything together. I've said that. I feel like this team always takes a breather when. In my opinion, hockey's a game where when you have some success, you have to be even more desperate, harder working, because the other team is going to make a push, so you have to be that much tougher. And it seems like the Avs just think, well, yeah, we've done our thing now. We got a lead. We can relax here for a few boys and let somebody else do it. And it's not working. It's not working.
Well, they can relax for a couple of days because they are on a homestand, but they get a sort of unusually long break. They don't play again until Tuesday. Maybe the break will get them in the right headspace to come back out and play an important game against Dallas. He is Adrian Dater. Follow him on Twitter @ADater and check out everything he's putting together at ColoradoHockeyNow.com. Avalanche.com. AD, welcome back to town. Enjoy the weekend. We'll catch you Tuesday.
All right, you too, buddy. Talk to you soon.
All right, take care. Adrian Dater brought to you by Bud Light, the official beer sponsor of the Colorado Avalanche. And look, this is a problem. Look, you win 4 out of 13 games. It's a problem. And then you hear Adrian talk about the lack of communication. Jared Bednar talk about the lack of communication. The Avalanche's struggles in the third period, whether they're above board or behind it. This is an issue of, quite frankly, effort, not talent. This is a team that has extraordinary talent. This is an effort problem. And it's going to be a challenge for Jared Bednar. He is not Patrick Waugh. Patrick Waugh would have chucked something through a wall in the locker room by now. Bednar's not that guy. And that's not the only way to fix the problem, for sure. But Bednar will probably have to do something. It's not really on him. It's on his players not playing hard enough the whole way through. But Bednar, unfortunately, the nature of the game means he's the guy that has to find a way to change it. Avalanche now lost 3 straight and 6 of their last 8 games. Next play against the Dallas Stars at home on Tuesday. The national championship game is Monday. I, for one, cannot wait to see it. I bet you can't wait either. The other people that can't wait to see it are a bunch of NFL scouts. There's a lot of talent there. We'll break down who you want to keep your eye on for the NFL draft when Clemson and LSU face off next. The national championship game is Monday, and it is going to be a show. Clemson and LSU are both phenomenal teams with ridiculous talent. And a lot of these guys are going to go into the NFL. There's no question about it. When you look at the overall talent, I mean, it's pretty close, but Clemson's a bit younger, obviously. They seem to be in this game almost perennially now, which is definitely a credit to that program. And as a result, they don't quite have as many draft-ready prospects. Of course, Trevor Lawrence would be the number one pick in the draft if he was available, even over Joe Burrow. I'm not joking. That's exactly what he'd be. And Burrow might have had the best college football season a quarterback's ever had. But Lawrence is not available to be drafted. This is part of the situation we look at those talents. But you look at Burrow on LSU, almost certainly the first overall pick going to the Bengals. Bengals would be fools not to take the local Ohio product for his not only his talent, but his ability to sell tickets alone. You look at safety Grant Delpit, one of the 5 players that I have put on the big board of possibilities for the Denver Broncos. I like Delpit a lot. I'm not sure he'll be there at 15, but I take a look at a guy like Delpit, and I think maybe you don't need to retain Justin Simmons for $14 million. You might be able to solve it right there. You look at K'Lavon Chasen, Justin Jefferson, their wide receiver, Christian Fulton, the cornerback. These are all first-round talent guys. Top-tier guys. And there are probably at least a pair of guys that are first-rounders. Isaiah Simmons, another one of the 5 I picked for the Broncos. Again, I'm not sure he's going to get to 15. But if he does, got to jump all over that. Speedy linebacker's pretty valuable. And then wide receiver T. Higgins, another one of the players that could be considered. I'll be totally honest. To be somewhat unpopular because people get wrapped up in combine numbers. I'd rather have, if the Broncos do go wide receiver, which I do not recommend they do, but if they do, I'd go for T. Higgins over Henry Ruggs III if I had the choice. He's not as fast, but I'll take the 6'4", big-bodied receiver who's already a refined route runner. I think that's more valuable in today's NFL than the guy that just runs a high-speed 9 route. You can only use that so many times a game. So there's a lot of talent there to look at. And then when you're talking about depth, some guys that could be good depth for the Broncos. We'll see where they end up. But Sadiq Charles for LSU, one of their tackles, could be a good fit for the Broncos in the middle round if they go another direction. The great name, I love the name, Lloyd Cushenberry III. Lloyd Cushenberry III.
Is that on Mark Schlereth's possibilities big board?
No. It should be, though. That's a phenomenal name. The Duke of Cushenberry. Love that name. The third.
Can't wait till Roger Goodell announces that name.
Oh, it's fantastic. Lloyd Cushenberry III. He's got a fantastic name, but he's also a really, really good center and could be a very good fit for the Broncos in the middle rounds. I've made the argument and will continue to make the argument that there is nothing wrong with the way Connor McGovern played center, but he's just not that good at it, and he's better as a guard. I'd love to see them bring McGovern back, and I think they will, but I think they'd be better off if they brought him back as a guard and found themselves a center. Maybe the Earl of Cushenberry could be the answer. I hope so, only because I would never get tired of saying the name Lloyd Cushenberry III, ever. That's amazing. So you look at those kind of situations, there's some value there. You can also look at guys that have not yet declared but might be second or third round picks. Cornerback A.J. Terrell for Clemson could be a second or third rounder. That's someone you could use. Travis Etienne is a considered more of a second to third round running back. The Broncos need a little more depth at running back. There's a lot of value. I mean, just there, we went over, a dozen different players? Some the Broncos aren't going to get a hold of. But basically, all but Burrows, Simmons, and maybe Delpit will probably be available for the Broncos, if not in the first, but maybe the second or third as well. So not only when you watch the game should you be able to enjoy it, but there is also opportunity to maybe watch some future Broncos there. Guys that could be picked in this very draft. If you listen to Todd McShay, he says that Etienne is probably a day 2 pick. Okay. You could go that way. I mean, I don't necessarily think the Broncos need to go that way in the second, but if we were to slide to the third, hey, I kick the tires. Talked about Charles there. A lot of upside with those kind of guys. The other one that keep in mind in Clemson, Tremaine Ankrum is another one that's pretty impressive. He's a right tackle for Clemson, but he probably plays guard and might be a 4th, 5th round guy. So maybe that's even a fit if you bring McGovern back and they don't get it better at center. I love Tyler Biadasz of Wisconsin at that. But if they don't go get another center and you bring McGovern back, someone like Ankrum might be able to be had in the 4th round or even 5th round. That's pretty impressive. So there's so much talent here. So much talent here. But the Broncos should be all over this game. And of course they will be. Naturally, they will be. But you're looking at not only the prospects on these two teams are good prospects in general, but a lot of them fit what the Broncos need. Delpit fits what the Broncos need. Jefferson fits what the Broncos need. Fulton fits what the Broncos need. Simmons fits what the Broncos need. Higgins fits what the Broncos need. Charles, Cushenberry, Etienne, Ankrum, they all fit what the Broncos need. And at least, some of them already look pretty good in orange. It's going to be a fantastic game. I think LSU wins this. I just think their offense is borderline unstoppable. Wouldn't surprise me if Clemson won. I expect a reasonably close game. I do expect it to be a shootout. There's no way either of those teams are under 32 points. But there's a lot of talent and a lot of NFL talent and a lot of NFL talent that will probably be intriguing to the Denver Broncos. You might see a couple Denver Broncos on that field. That's pretty fascinating. Really is. I'm intrigued to see how some of these guys perform and then go through all the senior bowls and the combines and all that sort of stuff. I don't personally put much stock in combines. Rather watch game film. But I'm intrigued to see how that process goes. For the Denver Broncos quarterback situation, the process is well underway for Drew Lock. Over on 1043thefan.com, James Marilat wrote a piece that I quite frankly agree with entirely. If you've listened to this show for a while, you know I agree with it. James Marilat backs it up. We'll find out what other quarterbacks the Denver Broncos should pursue in the offseason next. Here's who the Denver Broncos should pursue at quarterback during the offseason. Nobody. Nobody at all. You want to grab some late-round guy to get into the backup scrap with Brandon Allen and Brett Rippon, go nuts. But this idea that gets thrown around, Tom Brady, stop it. Brady's not coming here. Tom Brady wouldn't want to come here. Why would he want to come here? I haven't had anyone ever give me a good reason. The idea that, well, Peyton Manning did and it worked out, stop that. That's silly. That's coincidence. The Broncos aren't going to just reinvent their team for 43-year-old Tom Brady. And 43-year-old Tom Brady looks like he's almost done, by the way. Some of his base stats were good, but all the ones that you should be worried about, like yards per attempt, completion percentage, yeah, that's a problem. Tom Brady's not coming. Shouldn't draft Tua Tagovailoa if he falls. Why take a chance on someone like that with injury when you have so many other needs? Nobody. They have their quarterback. The best thing John Elway said is, I don't see any other options right now. I think it's unrealistic to say we're going a different direction. Some people sort of thought that was faint praise. I thought it was quite the opposite. I think it's unrealistic to say that we're going a different direction. In other words, it is realistic to say that Drew Lock is the quarterback. That wasn't some sort of doubt. That was an affirmation. It was clumsy. I get that. But Elway hasn't been confused for being some great orator, okay? He's not Winston Churchill at the podium. That's fine. You don't need him to be. As James Marilat wrote, remember, when he announced John Fox's firing, he first thanked John Elway. He is John Elway. I don't worry about it when he says something a little bit weird there. But there's nothing to pursue. What's there to pursue? You're going to keep Joe Flacco for an insane amount of money to be the backup? Why? Why would you do that? Makes no sense. There is nothing the Broncos can do in this offseason that's going to give them a better option at quarterback than Drew Lock. And I'll tell you why. Let's say you add Jake Fromm, a quarterback that I think will start rising a little bit when all the processes go into place. Or let's say you just want to go with the athlete and go with Jordan Love. Is he going to beat Drew Lock right out of the gate? Probably not. The Broncos are so incredibly conservative with bringing along their quarterbacks. They're not going to immediately replace Drew Lock with a rookie. If you were to get Tua Tagovailoa, he's not even going to be able to play yet. And then you're going to what? Have the idea of Tagovailoa having a redshirt season hang over Drew Lock and then be disappointed when Lock doesn't play all that well? Moreover, you handicap your team because you've now used your first-round pick on a guy that can't help you in 2020. It just doesn't make sense. You go get another veteran that might have a little bit left in the tank. Okay, so you're not going to get Brady. You're not going to get Drew Brees. Stop with that silliness. Picking up Phillip Rivers would be a terrible idea. You want to go get a guy that's a long starter. Let's say, like, try to go get Andy Dalton just to compete with Drew Lock. What happens if Andy Dalton's a little bit better in the preseason because, you know, he's played a long time and Drew Lock hasn't? You going to go with Andy Dalton? How's that better? That doesn't make any sense. You really want Justin Herbert? I don't think he's a better prospect than Drew Lock personally, but you're going to bring Justin Herbert in and what? The Broncos are going to immediately start him on day one? It doesn't make sense. You can't keep Flacco. You can't go get a name brand veteran guy because it just makes the situation worse. You want to draft a quarterback? That's fine. Draft a quarterback. But do it in the 6th or 7th round as a developmental guy that maybe ends up on your practice squad, or maybe, if he just goes bonkers, ends up on your roster as a backup. Think Gardner Minshew. Stuff like that. That's what you want to be thinking about. Think about, you want to draft a quarterback? Fine. Pick up KJ Costello from Stanford. Oh, he's a Stanford guy. Pick someone like that up. Maybe he's your long-term backup, but he's not going to compete for the number one, but he might be a better option than Brandon Allen. Fine. Go do that. Fine. Whatever. You want to get Jake Bentley from South Carolina? Okay. You want to throw a dart in the very last rounds and grab a big arm like Steven Montez from up at CU Boulder and hope that he can figure it out? Okay. If you do that in the 7th round, I don't care. Whatever. But Drew Lock is your starter. And the better the Broncos will be if they come around to just basically saying, Drew Lock is our guy. Drew Lock will be the starting quarterback in 2020. All of our efforts are going to be getting Drew Lock ready for the 2020 season and to take over this team in the long term. The biggest problem you had on your roster, you actually solved. At least in the short term, you've solved it. Don't keep going back to that same well, thinking that you need to keep working on it. You have so many other positions, Broncos, that you need to work on. Focus on those. Like I said, the 5 units that need the most help. Number 1, by the way, coming into this season was quarterback. Number 1 by a lot. The offensive line was terrible. And I knew it was going to be terrible coming in. Quarterback was still the answer. Now it's offensive line, defensive line, cornerback, wide receiver, inside linebacker, in that order. Well, quarterback isn't even on there. Why do the Broncos insist on creating trouble where there isn't any? I don't know if the Broncos are really considering this, or if this is just a fan base or a media that has gotten so used to quarterback controversies that they don't know what else they're going to talk about, so they have to invent one. There is no quarterback controversy. You're not going back to Joe Flacco. Brandon Allen got his shot. Brett Rippon is a practice squad guy. Drew Lock is your starting quarterback. Goodness gracious, people. This team won 7 games all year long. Until Drew Lock came into being the quarterback, they had won 3. This team was 3-8. They were atrocious. Drew Lock comes in and they miraculously finish 7-9, and you want to tell me that, oh yeah, quarterback's still a big problem for us? No, it's not. You have many other big problems. Drew Lock has shown you more than enough to take the role in 2020. Now, he plays throughout 2020 and he can't hold the job? Okay. Then discuss it. Then give up the farm to get up to Trevor Lawrence. Whatever. But if the Broncos are worried about getting another quarterback in free agency or in their first pick in the draft, they are basically ensuring themselves another losing season next year, their 4th straight, burning another year off of Von Miller, and perhaps wasting the maturation of a Cortland Sutton and a Bradley Chubb, especially if you want to franchise tag Justin Simmons. If you want to franchise tag Justin Simmons on a 1-year deal, in the hopes that you can get him signed long term, and you're going to go get a quarterback and go through all this mess again, you just threw $14 million away. You're not going to make the playoffs. What's the point? Then let him go. I am hoping that this is just some sort of media creation because so many guys are so dependent on just talking about nothing but the quarterback, nothing but the quarterback, nothing but the quarterback, as if the Denver Broncos quarterback's the only sports story in this town that matters. That they're a little panicked and they want to make sure that there's something that they know what to do. So they're trying to get something in their wheelhouse. They're trying to get someone throw them a slow pitch softball. Yeah, I'm not afraid of that. I can talk about other things. The Broncos quarterback situation is solved for 2020. If the Broncos don't realize that, they're doing themselves and their fan base a tremendous disservice. Our stat of the night is next. Well, for the most part, yes. But these stats are definitely for someone who won. The Los Angeles Lakers tonight took out the Dallas Mavericks. Luka Doncic was so frustrated in this game that he tore his uniform. The Lakers win 129-114 in Dallas. LeBron James goes off. 35 points, 16 boards, 7 assists on 14 of 25 shooting. Anthony Davis did not play in the game thanks to a bruise, listed by the Lakers as a bruise on his buttocks. That's usually the reason I don't shovel snow, but I get it. We've all been there. But James, 14 for 25 shooting. The Lakers had 79 points in the first half. That's the most they've had in a first half in a road game since the shot clock era, breaking their old record of 78, which happened against the Rockets in 87 and against the Mavericks in 1980. So not only did the Lakers have a great game, but those 14 field goals by LeBron, pretty momentous. The career field goal list, the most people have made the most field goals. Not points, of course, but field goals. 3-point, 2-point throws that off. Granted, the scoring lists tend to have a little bit of overlap when you take a look at it. But LeBron James moved into fourth place all time with field goals made. That's pretty impressive. Now, he had already moved past Michael Jordan in total points. He's fourth place all time. He's only a couple hundred behind Kobe Bryant for third all time, so he'll make that this season with ease. But he actually now also passed Michael Jordan in field goals made this evening. Jordan had 12,192. LeBron now 12,197. Next up on that list is Wilt Chamberlain, 12,681. The top two, Karl Malone, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Not coincidentally, Karl Malone, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, number 2 and number 1, respectively, on the all-time points list. Chamberlain is 7th on the all-time points list, 47,859, behind Dirk Nowitzki and Jordan and James. But, of course, it is Chamberlain who is ahead of James and Jordan in field goals made because when Wilt Chamberlain played, no three-pointers. Chamberlain's always, I think, a little bit undersold when people talk about the best players in the history of the game. Probably a little shortchanged there when you look at his talent and his career. But big numbers for LeBron James. And when you look at LeBron James over the course of his career, obviously he's had a luminous career. But you look at this season alone, LeBron James is 35 years old. He's played an insane amount of basketball games in his career. His scoring is down a bit from last year, 27.4 in his first year with the Lakers to 25.1. But his rebounds, down just a smidge. His assists, however, way up. LeBron is aging about as well as any NBA player has ever aged. He's been absolutely remarkable. And if you thought there was going to be some sort of drop-off, not quite. He has been electric. Player efficiency rating, which I think is a tremendously good stat. It's simple, but it's effective. Basically, for player efficiency rating, for lack of a better term, if you ever see that, PER, when you look at stats, it's basically all the things that you can do good on a basketball field subtracted by all the things bad. So points, assists, rebounds, blocks, steals. Add those up, subtract missed field goals, missed free throws, and turnovers. And that basically is your player efficiency rating. Here's the top 5 in the league. Giannis Antetokounmpo, James Harden, Luka Doncic, then Anthony Davis, and then LeBron James. Nikola Jokic at the Nuggets is 8th, by the way. You're talking about a 35-year-old LeBron James who's still, by any measurement, one of the top 5 players in the league. That's extraordinary. Not to mention the fact you're talking about one of the most prolific scorers in the history of the league. It's easy to forget that at 35 years old, while still averaging 25 a game, LeBron James is the league leader in assists with 10.8 per game. He's the only guy with double-digit assists per game in the entire league. And he does that over Ricky Rubio, Doncic, then Trae Young, then Ben Simmons, then Devontae Graham. Most of those guys, with the exception of Doncic, are point guards. Out of the top 10 assist guys in the entire league, only 3 are not point guards. Number 9, James Harden. Number 3, Doncic. And number 1, LeBron James. I think because his career overlapped with Kobe Bryant, people don't necessarily give James quite the amount of awe that he probably deserves. And certainly moving around from team to team has been not great for the way he's perceived. But what he's done is remarkable. So our stat of the night, LeBron James now 4th all time in field goals made. He has been amazing. Speaking of the NBA, the Denver Nuggets start the beginning of a back-to-back tomorrow night. They will take on the Cleveland Cavaliers, who they should easily dispatch. If they don't, there's a problem. Nuggets should cruise in that game. But then Sunday's game is fascinating. The Nuggets, of course, have been on an absolute roll. By the time they face off against the Clippers, it'll be a month since they lost to the Philadelphia 76ers. That was actually a month ago today. Since that time, a month ago, the Nuggets have basically been on a rampage. They have won 12 of their last 15 games. The one they dropped to Washington, that's a bad loss. The one they dropped to New Orleans, that's a bad loss. But you don't expect a team to go 14 for 15. Even the Golden State Warriors didn't do that with any regularity at their peak. Nuggets are playing great ball. Now they're back at home, following maybe their biggest win of the year over the Dallas Mavericks, that 107-106 road win on Wednesday. Nikola Jokic is going nuts. 47 and 33 in his last 2. They should easily dispatch Cleveland. But it is the game against the Clippers on Sunday night that is absolutely intriguing to me. Clippers, of course, are immensely talented. Paul Millsap seems like a guy that probably should sit for a week or two and get better. What that means for Michael Porter Jr., you don't necessarily know yet. Means a lot for Jeremy Grant, for sure. We'll see what happens with Millsap this weekend. But the Nuggets and the Clippers are tied. 4.5 points behind the Lakers in the Western Conference for the number 2 spot. Sunday's game will be an absolute statement game for the Denver Nuggets. As big as ones they've had all year. They had a great one against the Mavericks. But this one really matters. Biggest game of the year for the Nuggets will be on Sunday. Definitely make sure that we talk about that a little bit as well when we get back next week, because these are important games for the Nuggets. Can't overlook the Cavs, who are 11 and 27, to get to that Clippers game. I don't think the Nuggets will, but we've seen them play down to their competition before. So we'll see. Not sure about how that'll all shake down. But big times for the Nuggets coming up. Important times for the Nuggets coming up. Important times for the NFL coming up. My favorite part of Friday. We're not done with it yet. There's still a few more weeks to go. We make our NFL picks. Kevin and I tell you what's going to happen. Probably, hopefully, sort of. Next. Love that music. That means it's time to break down the NFL games of the weekend. Divisional round, NFL playoffs. Kevin Kistner in the booth. We're going to go through these games, tell you what we think is going to happen. Where do we start, Kevin?
Let's start in Santa Clara.
Chronological order. I like where your head's at.
You like where I'm going
Yeah.
here. We'll start in location and the times of each game. The San Francisco 49ers hosting the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, this game, okay, the 49ers are better than the Vikings, but this reminds me of that little Spider-Man meme on the internet where they're just pointing at each other.
Yeah.
Because these two teams are basically have great running games, great defensive line play. They have a style that is basically the same. Both Garoppolo and Cousins can be very effective quarterbacks and slice you up, but both of them, when they're pressured, can be actually kind of crummy. So, to my mind, this is who gets better penetration, gets better heat on the quarterback. That is probably going to be the Niners. The concern of mine for the Vikings is the injury to Adam Thielen. Obviously, we know he's been hurt for a lot of the year. He had to have stitches this week. He's still expected to play, but I don't know what that means. I understand that Kyle Rudolph did a very good job making that touchdown catch to get them here, but George Kittle's the better guy. I would go as far as to say this. George Kittle's the most talented guy on the field for both teams. And I think he'll be the difference maker. I will take San Francisco in a game that I think will be a lot closer than people think.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, the Spider-Man pointing at each other. Gary Kubiak taking on Kyle Shanahan.
Right.
A lot of Bronco connections in this game. And we did a poll earlier on 104.3 The Fan on the Twitter page. Most people are cheering for Kyle Shanahan in this one, but it's going to be a good one. I mean, it really is. I mean, this is two teams that are top 10 in rushing the football this year. So this might be a fast game because they're going to be so focused on the run. But yeah, I think George Kittle's going to be going to have a huge impact for this game. Both teams could get to the quarterback too. I mean, these are two of the best front sevens in football.
Kirk Cousins finally broke the seal and got a playoff win, right? This is Jimmy Garoppolo's playoff debut. I'll give you a weird little stat here. He's only the 10th quarterback in history to make his playoff debut for a number 1 seed. The other quarterbacks have gone 4 and 5.
Wow.
Or 1 seeds.
That's interesting.
So at least Cousins sort of got that monkey off his back, right? Feeling a little less pressure. Garoppolo might be feeling a lot of pressure. If you're a Vikings fan, that might be something to hang on to. I think this game's going to be really close. I think it's going to be a fourth quarter game. I think it's going to be less than a touchdown. I think it's a 3-point game. But I do think the 49ers come out on top.
I was just going to say, I think it's a 3-point game as well. I'm taking the 49ers in this one as well. They're at home of the Super Bowl, home of Super Bowl 50. So Gary Kubiak makes his return there as well. Next up, we got the Saturday night game. The Tennessee Titans, can they pull off the upset in Baltimore?
No, they can't, but they can make it pretty close. Look, the trick for the Titans is to do basically what they did. Now, we know that Lamar Jackson has been just electric. He's going to be the league's MVP. One of the concerns for the Titans is that there's only 8 teams in the league that allowed more than 4,000 yards passing. The Titans are one of them. So it's going to be absolutely critical for them to hold the clock. Derrick Henry is everything in this game for the Titans. That when they get the offense, they're going to have to grind it out, eat the clock, finish with 7 points, not 3, and they'll have a chance. But I think it's going to be pretty tough. The Ravens' defense absolutely sends the heat. Ryan Tannehill's going to have to play a lot better than he played against the Patriots. I think he'll play a little better than he played against the Patriots, but probably not enough. I think the Ravens win it. I don't think they blow them out, but they probably win by a touchdown.
You know, Chris Harris was on the Rich Eisen show today, and he said that he really likes the Baltimore Ravens to go into Kansas City or to go against the Kansas City Chiefs and beat them because they have 4 great corners in that secondary. Okay, so Ryan Tannehill's going to have a hard time throwing the football in this one.
Right.
But that means go with the same game plan you had last week.
Yep, grind it out.
Pound the ball down their throats. Just keep grinding with the Derrick Henry and just try to keep Lamar Jackson off the field. If you're getting 4 or 5 yards a carry like last game, I think Derrick Henry was averaging 5.2. If you could keep pounding the rock, just keep doing that, and you're going to get slowly, that clock's going to run, and Lamar's going to be stiff on that sideline and have to try to get loosened up. And defensively, I think Tennessee's going to have to They're going to make Lamar Jackson throw the ball.
I think they are, but as we talked about, they've given up a lot of yards. To me, that's funny. This is obviously one of the stats that you use left and right to make sure a game comes out one way or the other. But if the Titans don't win time of possession, they don't have a chance.
Yeah.
And it could get ugly. They have to win time of possession, and I think that's the easy focus. Get the first downs, keep it going, keep it on the ground. You've got a chance. But if they lose time of possession, forget it. They're going to get knocked out in a hurry.
And that's Ryan Tannehill. Convert on those third down
Can't
passes.
make the mistakes. Yep, you got to
Just
convert.
play clean football, play smart football. Don't do nothing stupid. Don't try to force it. Just make the right read and make the easy pass.
Yep.
Even if that's checking down and you're playing the field position game. So I'm going to take Baltimore, but man, I'm pulling for Tennessee.
You picked that game, by the way. You picked the Titans last week. You actually went and did the
Should
thing.
I roll with the Titans again?
Well, it depends. How much do you like being right? But you were right last week. You called it.
All right, I'll take Tennessee.
All right.
Nashville's going to be partying again this week. Next up, we got the Houston Texans going into Arrowhead to take on the Kansas City Chiefs.
Boy, these Sunday games are going to be fun. I am really, really intrigued about these. I think it's going to be really fun to watch both of them. Both these quarterbacks are just incredible. I think the reason that you believe in the Chiefs in this is Drew Lock and the Denver Broncos. You saw what Lock and the Broncos could do. I know J.J. Watt has been back, and he looked like he's effective, and that does single-handedly change the defense for the Texans. It really does. If J.J. Watt's on the field, you need to presume he is in full destructor mode, and he's going to try to wreck your game. But this is a defense that can give up points, a lot of points, and there's very few teams that can put points on the board as quick as the Chiefs. I think what you saw with the Broncos exposed a hole with the Texans, and I think they're very good. I just cannot see them going into Arrowhead and winning this game unless Patrick Mahomes makes a bunch of mistakes, and I don't think he will. I think the Chiefs win this game. I think they probably win it by 10.
Here's the thing. I could see the Kansas City jumping out to like a 14-0 lead right off the bat. And if that happens, it's over. I mean, Houston, they did not look that great last week against Buffalo. I mean, Deshaun Watson was running for his life. It seemed like every other play. It looked like they had the Broncos offensive line. That's what it kind of looked like.
Yeah.
You know, I think a lot of it depends on if Will Fuller's going to play in this one to give Deshaun Watson an extra weapon, because other than that, he's got DeAndre.
And the longer he has to wait, the more trouble he's at. Kansas City's defense was much maligned at the beginning of the season.
They've improved.
They've gotten a lot better, and they've gotten a lot better against one thing that's very interesting. Against rollouts over its last 6 games, the second best QBR against in the entire league, only allowing, get this, QBR of 5.1.
Wow.
Against quarterbacks rolling out over the last 6 weeks.
They figured some out, and they're getting hot at the right time.
Yep.
I'm going to take Kansas City in this one. I mean, I think they probably blow them out, too. I think they get a big lead.
I think it's a double-digit win. I do.
The last and final game is the Seattle Seahawks travel to Lambeau Field, where they are asking people to come shovel Lambeau Field.
They're offering to pay you. It's $12 an hour, and they'll pay you as soon as you're done.
Yeah.
So, I mean, something.
They should be giving you a playoff ticket.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure those are gone. Russell Wilson has never won at Lambeau, ever. In 7 games against the Packers in his career, including playoff games, 10 interceptions. It's the most he's thrown against any opponent ever. He has fewer interceptions against every team in the NFC than the Packers, and he's played all the other teams at least 16 times. He's only played 7 against the Pack. Obviously, they know something about him here. I really like Russell Wilson, and I really like the Seahawks, but they always seem to do 1 or 2 things really stupid every game. And while I'm not entirely sold on the Packers yet, I do believe in Aaron Rodgers, and I do believe in Lambeau Field in January. I'll take the Packers in a close game.
Yeah, it's going to be a close one for sure. Patrick Mahomes said when it was snowing out, he knew he was good because he could throw the ball down the field, and he was effective doing it. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be thinking the same thing. Now, I think it's going to come down to the fourth quarter. It's going to come down to the final drives here. But Aaron Rodgers played in the snow. He's played in the cold. He knows what it's like to do at Lambeau Field. Yeah, he's at home. I think this is where the season ends for Seattle. Give me the Packers by 3.
Me too, and I think it's the first team to 20 wins. It's not going to be high scoring. It's going to be a old school, grinded out playoff game, even though you have two of the best quarterbacks on the planet throwing.
And part of it, too, is, Russell Wilson's a guy who he's better outside of the pocket. He's not your standard pocket quarterback. He's better getting out of the pocket and making plays with his feet, getting receivers all messed up and running around.
Rodgers is too in many cases.
And Rodgers is too, but Rodgers is the better pocket passer in this one.
Yes.
I think Russell's going to have a hard time trying to get out of that pocket playing in that snow.
Yeah, I'm with you.
This is when the field conditions can really make an impact. And it's Marshawn Lynch running the football, too, for him. Come on. I'm not sold on Marshawn anymore.
So we agree on 3 of the 4. We're picking the Niners together. We're picking the Chiefs. We're picking the Packers. But you're going to roll with the Tennessee Titans, and I will take Baltimore Ravens.
I'm taking Tennessee. It's going to be partying on Broadway in Nashville tomorrow night, too.
We'll see. If you pull it off twice in a row, I'm just going to let you do it the week next. We will wrap it up, but we'll start off with our time machine next. We're going to go back to 1981, 39 years ago. Or more, my apologies. More accurately, I always get confused with this football. No. 1981 season. The game happened in 1982, so 38 years ago. There, my math is better. One of the more significant plays in NFL history in a terrific game and a matchup between two of the best coaches in history. The San Francisco 49ers were hosting the NFC Championship game against the Dallas Cowboys. 58 seconds left in the game. 49ers were 3rd and 3. The Niners were down, but not for long. Dwight Clark, you might have recognized on that call a familiar voice, but not really a familiar voice for football. That was Vin Scully, by the way, the longtime Dodgers announcer calling that game on CBS back in 1982. Montana hits Dwight Clark into the back of the end zone. Hearing that clip, you could probably envision it in your mind. Clark leaps up, grabs that with the fingertips. 14-play, 83-yard drive. Joe Montana takes them down. Gets that big win. The Cowboys, by the way, their sort of streak of domination that lasted throughout the 70s, that basically ended on that day. And the 49ers dynasty that began in the 1980s, well, that's basically where it began. So a phenomenal play, obviously, one of the most significant plays in history. And one of the fun things about it is Bill Walsh watched the play and assumed that Montana intentionally threw it away. He immediately began planning for the 4th down play, but he heard the crowd cheer. Montana actually said for his part, he didn't feel he threw the ball too high. He never saw the catch because he got knocked to the ground. But looking at it, he was amazed about how high Dwight Clark got up there. Dallas could not quite get it done in the final 51 seconds. Couldn't quite get him squared away. Drew Pearson at the time, if I remember right. Drew Pearson caught a long pass, and he got horse collar tackled. Back when that was still legal. Otherwise, he might have scored a touchdown. Clark, in the documentary shot about the Niners, actually basically said the best thing about it, admitting it's humbling. Really, I feel honored people are talking about it 25 years later when he recorded it. I'm honored to be able to be a part of a play that was the culmination of this incredible season. It's great to give 49ers fans the moment they can relive over and over, and I know they do because when in San Francisco, a lot of places, people want to talk about that play and how it crushed the Cowboys and sent them into submission for a decade. I never get tired of talking about it. I never get tired of seeing it because I sign pictures and send them to people. I see that catch every day. That is phenomenal. Dwight Clark, who passed away in the summer of 2018 at the age of 61. One of the more significant plays in NFL history, 38 years ago today. That is one of those that, I was really too young to watch it or remember it, but you've seen it so many times in highlights. I can envision that. I was hearing Kevin play that clip, and I can watch it in my head. That camera angle from the back of the end zone that all of a sudden Clark goes up impossibly high, somehow just sandwiches that ball between his fingers, comes down to the corner. Just unbelievable. Great playoff history there. Maybe something like that happens this weekend. Good hope.
Well, Sean, another fun fact, little tongue twister there. Tom Brady was at that game. He was the little boy in the crowd.
Oh, wow. Well, that's pretty inspiring.
I mean, watching arguably the greatest play in NFL history.
And then he gets Rob Gronkowski of his tight end of his own and basically spends his career doing the whole thing.
Yeah.
And winning even more than Montana, which at the time nobody thought was going to be possible. Wow. News around the NFL, by the way, Wade Phillips ousted from the Rams. We knew that early this week. Well, they're interested in going back. Brandon Stokley will be the defensive coordinator to replace Wade Phillips. Stokley, you might not be familiar with the team, or the term and the fellow, but he was a member of the Denver Broncos coaching staff this season. The outside linebackers coach for the Broncos, Brandon Stokley will now be the defensive coordinator for the Rams. Offense coordinator they also hired will be Kevin O'Connell, who is offensive coordinator for Washington. So I guess the lateral move, a little bit unusual, but then again, is it really a lateral move if you're going from Washington to the Rams? No. Sean McVay, curiously, has actually not had a full-time offensive coordinator since Matt LaFleur left after the 2017 season. He never filled the position. So you end up now seeing with Stokley from the Broncos, outside linebackers coach, goes over and takes over the defense coordinator for the Rams. The Broncos will have to fill that position now as well. NFL sources say that Jadeveon Clowney will not be fined for the hit on Carson Wentz that knocked Wentz out of the game in last week's wild card game. I understand the frustration with Eagles fans about that, and it certainly made an immense difference in the game. It might have cost them the game, that injury. I completely understand it. But I agree. Helmet-to-helmet hits are concerning. There's all those sorts of things that are concerning. Player health should be paramount. But here's the statement the referee Sean Smith said after the game. He was a runner, meaning Wentz, and he did not give himself up. We saw incidental helmet contact, and in our judgment, we did not rule that to be a foul. I agree entirely. I don't think it was a dirty play. I really don't. I think, remember, Wentz was diving forward. Clowney dove too. I didn't think it was dirty. I really didn't. I thought it was a bang, 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 bang play. I didn't think it was dirty. It's unfortunate that Wentz was hurt. He wasn't flagged, and he will not be fined according to NFL sources. I think that's, quite frankly, I think that's the right outcome, though it is no solace to Eagles fans. The Colorado Avalanche lose tonight as their frustrating and somewhat confusing run of play continues. They have now only won 4 of their last 13 games. Yes, they get the loser point, but they lose 4-3 tonight to the Penguins. They give up a goal in overtime after tying it late, and they have had some challenges. They are off until Tuesday when they will then play the Dallas Stars. The Avs' frustrating run of play has now dropped them behind the Stars in the Western Conference playoff chase and down to third in the Central Division. They are still third overall in the West. The Denver Nuggets will now go on a back-to-back starting tomorrow. They have the Cleveland Cavaliers on Saturday. Then they take on the Clippers on Sunday, in which will amount to a significant statement game for the Nuggets, a game that I think they need to win down at the Pepsi Center at home over Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, and company. As for us, when we come back, well, we'll have gotten through that Nuggets back-to-back. We'll have gotten through all 4 games of the NFL divisional round, and we'll be following the national championship game. And I mean literally. The national championship game, you'll catch it right here on The Fan. We will be on immediately afterwards to talk about all of that.
Who you got in that game?
I got LSU by a little.
By a little?
By a little.
LIL? I'll take Clemson just to be different.
Yeah, it's worked for you so far. Well, he's Kevin Kistner. Follow him on Kistner Radio at Twitter if you want to follow me. It's S. Drotar for those military inclined. That's Sierra, Delta, Romeo, Oscar, Tango, Alpha, Romeo.
All right, you've been playing a little too much Call of Duty, haven't you?
SDROTAR. We'll catch you next Monday after the championship game. Enjoy the football. This is The Fan Late Night. Have a safe weekend. It's 104.3 The Fan.